and welcome back to another episode of Rough Sketch to Final Draft. I am your host, Coach Adam, and we are continuing season 4 with more and more amazing guests as we dive deep into the search of identity, into this idea of who we are, and peeling back those layers of all of the personality, the physical, the spiritual, the esoteric. And we have quite the amazing guest in store for us today that I'm going to now hand over for her to be able to introduce her amazing self. Sarah, introduce yourself for the audience and the benefit of everyone today.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I go by the Alchemist, and I am a spiritualist, esotericist, mystic, whatever you'd like to call that. I'm into esoteric knowledge, and I share esoteric knowledge in what I would hope to be the most condensed, easily digestible way to my audience.
I love it. And what you do is absolutely incredible. It truly, truly is. It resonates, and obviously, it's going everywhere. Your content was brought to me. There were many individuals from this amazing community that wanted me to see if we could even connect and resonate. So I'm grateful for your time today. Again, I'll never get done saying that. I'm happy to say it on this recording live for the internet to let you know how much I truly think highly of you in that regard. And I think for the audience, understanding the and unpacking this beautiful term of alchemist and alchemy might be new to some, might be really understandable and digestible to others. Let's kind of start there. What is alchemy? What is it to you? What is it that draws you into it? And how does that kind of play a role in our everyday lives?
Yeah, so alchemy is very core to esotericism in general. And
Yeah.
so my own connection with alchemy has evolved the more that I have grown because alchemy, like I said, is very core. We learn about it from the spiritual, psychological end, from base metal of lead being the
Mm.
unconscious raw material of the psyche in its base form. And then
Yeah.
its journey of refinement and purity into unity consciousness or enlightenment, gold.
Mm.
And yet I see it as everything now.
Yeah.
Literally, I see it as everything because it's the divine chemistry. That's literally what
Mm.
alchemy means. It means the black art, it means chem, but it really means the divine chemistry. And the divine
Yeah.
chemistry is how, at least in this creation, this universe of light, alchemy is used to create.
Mm.
So it's how you transmute something. So if you want to descend into matter and be a person and have a physical experience, that's alchemy. If you want to ascend out of matter into the spiritual, whatever density, that's alchemy. Everything
Mm.
is alchemy. And so the more that I have grown, the more that I see alchemy in literally every facet of life. Like you and me talking today is alchemy because I have a specific energy, you have a specific energy. We're mixing those together with whatever's in alignment in the stars at this moment. That is actually the the alchemy of our chemistry.
I
And
love
that will bring something that will never be able to be replicated.
it.
So I see alchemy at the very core of existence.
I love that. I really, really do. And thank you for the summarization in that regard. For those who know it, beautiful. There's many individuals in this incredible community that are aware of it. And there's going to be many that will fall into this wonderful episode, months, years from now in that regard and benefit from the fact of just this amazing summation in that regard. Because it does play into our lives in the fact of transmutation and the evolution of the soul, the processes that we go through. And I think that obviously ties into where we're kind of going to go lead into it next. And this is something that you are at the forefront, I believe, of being able to talk about beliefs. And beliefs also carry with them the transfiguration flame of understanding through alchemy, right? And there was a beautiful post that you had that touched my heart that was beliefs can sometimes even block our own development in that truest regard. Do you mind, for the sake of the audience, to unpack that right now, even tie it in with the ideas of alchemy and how that relates to our spiritual journey?
Yeah, so it's funny. You don't know what you don't know, but then you also kind of remember things as they come. And me being a teacher, the f- the channel never turns off. It's
Yeah,
constantly going now. I won't ever
yeah,
run out of material. It won't stop. And so because of that, I when I'm saying something,
yeah,
40% of the time I'm amazed.
yeah. Yeah.
So when that
Did that
came
come out of me?
through,
Yeah,
I was.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's right. But it's coming out of me. It's not coming out of someone
Yeah.
else. So that was a part of my, do people get left behind? And so when
Yeah.
I'm giving a transmission, I only really know the topic at this point. And then I sit down and I just go for it.
Yeah.
And when that was coming through, that was just so true because,
Mm.
well, a deep esoteric saying is, by their fruits you shall know them.
Mm.
And it just means, what are the fruits, right? Because
Right.
you could talk however you want to talk, but if you just look at the fruit of whatever tree, that will speak for itself. And so beliefs can obscure. They can be a smokescreen.
Yeah.
They can make
Right.
us feel a specific way, but the end product, that fruit, is very
Mm.
it doesn't matter what the beliefs are, like if I agree with those beliefs or if I don't agree with those beliefs at all. Beliefs aren't even real.
Yeah.
Beliefs are just some sort of matrix in and of itself, some sort of
Mm.
sequence of thought forms. And what happens is, like, when you eat that, like, what did you turn into?
Yeah.
That's what matters. So even as I'm teaching
Mm.
esoterica, even though I have strong beliefs about a lot of things, even with all of that, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, beliefs don't really matter.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It only matters what they turned you into,
I love
like
that.
pain into wisdom, or knowledge into something. That knowledge is meant, just like the Adam's apple. The
Right.
Adam's apple is meant off of the the apple was what? The tree of knowledge. So it's like, it matters if it gets digested, right? Not if we
Mm.
just put it in our mouth.
Yeah. The real true symbolism behind the Adam and Eve understanding, the tree of wisdom, right? The tree of life and
Yes.
death, and so on and so forth. What fruits are you actually consuming? I love that fact, and you'll know them by their fruits, the fruits of their labor. I love that. It's such a good one to remind ourselves of. Circling back to a conversation that I had with Sebastian Angus earlier in this amazing season, which has just been huge for so many incredible guests, he reminded us of the phrase and the fact that preach wherever you go and use words whenever necessary, which is interesting in the fact of allowing your reputation to proceed. You're preaching wherever you go, right? By the fruits of your own labor, they will know you in that sense. And then say some anecdotal things here and there if you have to, but for the most part, who you are will resonate and be there in the same way that you are in your community. Who you are speaks volumes without you having to say what it is. And it's a beautiful thing to watch in your videos and in the content that you create in that regard, because who you are and what you are speaks volumes. And then you do have these amazing things that you say after the fact. And I find that to be an amazing synchronicity for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, I would love to continue on with beliefs at the same time. There's so much to unpack and unlayer there. So I'm going to go into another portion of it with the idea of where we get into our feelings, because they're interrelated and truth is in there too. And the feelings are in our beliefs and they're tightly woven together. And there was, again, one of the things that resonated with me that I've wanted to actually share with you is the fact that most of the time we're not feeling our feelings, we're thinking our feelings. And I think that this ties into belief so beautifully. So let's kind of gestate and chew on this one a little bit, because I love this particular phrase. So unpack this for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So when people say I'm angry,
Yeah.
they're speaking from the mind. When people say I'm sad, I'm this, I'm that, we put so much of what's actually going on in the visceral somatic body
Mm.
only at the mental layer. And the mental layer, still, we can forever talk about whatever feeling it is and
Yeah.
still not have felt that feeling fully, still not have processed that feeling fully. So it's alone, in a sense, when we only leave it in the mind. Now we still feel
Mm.
those sensations, and the
Right.
mind has the job, it has the task of being able to relay and communicate what the body's experiencing. But we don't really ever drop deep enough into the actual feeling, is what I've noticed, to honestly say that we've reached communion with what we're saying we feel. We're
Wow.
mostly thinking the feeling,
Yeah.
and that's not wrong, but when that just becomes the mode of operation, the way that we feel, then that becomes a real big issue, because now the mind is thinking and feeling and living in its own construct, literally, that's
Yeah.
disconnected from the body. So, what I do with clients is I tell them, how does that, whatever it is that they're feeling, what sensations is it? Because so much of the attention and focus and spotlight goes in the story, and the
Yeah.
story is very important. But the story can't be so important that we never move it aside for a second to drop in
Mm.
to what the feelings of that brought up.
Yeah.
So how the body feels, the body doesn't say I'm angry.
Mm.
The body will speak, my heart's racing, my throat is burning, my belly
Yeah.
is trembling, my jaw is tense. But we don't ever, I see the majority of us, we don't really ever reach that level of communion with what the body is feeling
Yeah.
when we're saying things about feelings. We're usually just thinking the feelings.
I love that. So we have yet to even kind of connect at the visceral level of what it is that we're really feeling, and tying it back into what you were saying about beliefs, is that our belief even about those feelings, if I may paraphrase and kind of tie this up with a bow of what you're saying, is a narrative in and of itself that may or may not be the objective truth. It's just a narrative that we actually literally start to ingest and digest, and it might be not the actual. So it obviously in our lives, taking a step back in a humble sense, if it's harming us, that we have a narrative that we're believing in self doubt, say for instance, that we've bought that narrative. The objective truth may be entirely different, that it was actually a positive experience, that we've internalized this belief into this process, and now we're feeling that it's now negative, and we're stuck in this cycle that you were kind of alluding to. Yes.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
to put an even other bow on it,
Yeah.
to go back one step further and tie this into alchemy,
Yeah.
alchemy at that point would be the transformation of our perceptions.
Yeah. Mm.
Because as you stated, the perception is where all of that other emotional or mental content's coming from. And I
Yeah.
don't mean that it's a change of perception, meaning that I don't mean to gaslight. The majority of the time,
Sure.
when we have a
Yeah.
certain perception about things, um, what really the truth in that isn't that we're wrong. Now,
Mm.
sometimes we're wrong, but the
Right.
majority of the time, we are perceiving accurately. It's just a matter of if we always feed the same momentum
Mm.
into the same emotional temperaments, into the same perceptions, then nothing will change. So it's a
Yeah.
matter of going, what would happen even if that was true? How can I
Yeah.
still shift my perception? Because
Mm.
truth is what heals more than anything else. So if we gaslight ourselves and come from like, well, I'm perceiving that wrong, we might be perceiving that wrong because we're just so conditioned negatively. But
Yeah.
many times we're not perceiving something wrong, but it still doesn't feel good. And that's up to us now to be given the task of softening that momentum that goes into those patterns that we would call karma. And
Yeah.
at that point, going through the alchemical process of shifting our
Yeah.
perception, shifting our thoughts, beliefs, emotional temperaments towards things that are healthier in choice and healthier in pattern.
I love that. And transfiguring that base metal of that base thought into a higher thought, in which will yield a better fruit in that regard and transform your life in the way that hopefully you're aiming for in that sense. I love that. Okay, and that's going to segue right into the next portion that I wanted to kind of keep on going on this, to keep expanding right from an induction to a higher form. What are the spiritual awakening stages in that regard, for the benefit of this audience who has yet to understand all of these wonderful things that you are always in communion with in that regard, and sharing forth? What are those stages of spiritual awakening? Let's like kind of start unpacking and walking through those together.
Yeah, so I made a carousel recently, and it wasn't actually a true reflection of the stages. It was more so just almost like the Dark Night of the Soul turned into
Sorry.
each stage. But to go back to like,
Yeah.
what are the stages? If you're talking to
Yeah.
Gnostic, Hermeticist, alchemist such as myself, we shall start with calcination. Calcination
There we go.
is void through fire. All of the
Mm.
stages would be of spiritual awakening are
Mm.
some sort of void. It's
Yeah.
just a different facet of the void. It's a different element. So now you're in the element of fire, void by
Mm.
fire,
Yeah.
or void by water, void by air. So the first would be by fire, and that would be calcination. Calcination is let's burn everything. Let's burn as much as we can, as much as the ego will allow itself to be burned. Let's just set it all on fire. That would be the first stage of
Yeah.
spiritual awakening. And how that would play out is truly from a dark night of the soul. That would
Sure.
be the tension of all of our falsehood, the tension of all of the different personalities that we would call cognitive dissonance, finally having to meet each other or clash. So at that point, the higher self
Yeah.
has to orchestrate some sort of divine intervention to show us our own neurosis and show us our own psychosis.
Mm.
So at that point, then it would move into the second stage of spiritual awakening, which
Yeah.
is void by air, or what we
Mm.
would call separation.
Yeah.
Separation is then going, okay, I'm only ashes from the calcination stage. At
Right.
that point, let's sift through these ashes and get things organized, right? Because
Yeah.
in the first stage, everything was just entangled. It was too glued together, so it needed to just be broken down. But now we could start organizing things like, what is this belief versus what I really am? Am I
Yeah.
really this person? Or was this a part of myself I trained in order to survive? Like we start shifting through the falsehoods and whatnot and beliefs and start reevaluating.
I love that.
At that point, it's the third stage.
Mm.
And in the third stage of spiritual awakening, um, I'm missing the name of it, but it's after separate. Oh, dissolution.
There
So
we go.
in dissolution, that's the void by water.
Mm. Yeah.
Void by water is at that point emotional flooding can
Mm.
be one of the ways we experience void by water because the water element is representing the subconscious, the emotional body. And
Mm.
so through there now we're starting to have the the subconscious and the emotional body also come in and contribute its feedback and how it feels about all of this. And so we start getting in touch with true emotions. This is what we would call like the when the heart center starts awakening. And then we have the fourth stage of spiritual awakening, conjunction.
Yeah.
Conjunction is when all all these three stages were ones of separating. And
Mm.
that's what alchemy is. Alchemy is like, let's just separate everything so that it can combine again at a higher order, a more
Yeah.
unified, coherent order. So at the earth stage, which is conjunction, that's when we start the first draft. It's just a draft. Like
Huh.
that's the first draft in alchemy to go, let's do a prototype of what union within oneself would look like. And then after that, we have to
Yeah.
bash it because that's what alchemy is. Alchemy is a constant, just like it's like a kid actually playing with a sandcastle. It goes through all of this
Yeah.
hard work to build
I
something
like
up,
that.
and then as soon as it's there, it goes, "Oh, that was crap," and it just throws it down again because it's
Yeah.
constant. It's like alchemists are like constant OCD purists. It's like,
Yeah.
how can I purify this form? So after that, it goes through a fermentation process,
Yeah.
literally rotting.
Literally. Yeah. Decaying. Yeah. There we go.
It's like, let's decay this now.
Yeah.
So it goes, so there's different stages depending on like what model of alchemy you go off of,
Yeah.
but seven is just an extremely revered and holy number, and so I go by the seven stages.
I
And
love
I
that.
even have an article on my website about the seven stages of alchemy.
Mm.
And but the final stage is sublimation, and
Yeah.
sublimation is what we also call coagulation. And it's when it's like, no, I swear we're going to unify this time for real, we're not going to bash it afterwards, until the cycle repeats itself again. So
Nice.
coagulation, aka sublimination,
Yeah.
like if you think of sublime, that would be the stage in the spiritual awakening process where it's like, oh, I'm at a stable bliss.
Yeah.
right? That's what we want. We want the unified field. We want to just not feel bad because spiritual awakening has so much intense and heavy processes, but
Yeah.
it gets to this stage of just surrender
Mm.
of the false self,
Yeah.
and the fruits of it is an open heart center that brings a stable bliss, one that's not peak states. And there's
Mm.
nothing wrong with peak states, but when the heart center gets fully opened and there's the unification of the left and right hemisphere, it creates a more stable bliss rather than just peaks
Interesting.
and the inevitable falls.
I love that. So it's like the heart rate monitor, and then all of a sudden it finally harmonizes into a cyclical wave of some sort, right? Yeah, that's the high hope. I know it's not perfect, but that's the high hope. Yeah,
Yeah, and the good thing about alchemy is that when in doubt, it just repeats. So
yeah,
it's repeating at a higher octave.
mm.
And so there's not like a okay, it's done, it's the finality, but there is such a thing as having a distinct level of consciousness reached. And
Mm.
sometimes in the spiritual community we get really too subjective, and
Yeah,
we like to just say things that don't really mean anything at the end of the day, like, oh well, I don't know, but things about like how, I don't know, they sound humble but they're not very true.
yeah,
There's such a thing as reaching certain states of consciousness. It's just the spiritual ego always likes to come in and go, okay, you're done. That's the real problem.
yeah,
It's the ego coming in
yeah,
and declaring things. But there is
yeah.
such a thing as having fruits of all of the hard work.
Mm. And that ego is it's sneaky. It can present itself sometimes as well as something that is incredibly positive, in the sense of you've achieved some sort of stage of growth that you really have been working on, maybe for 10 years, 20 years of your life, and all of a sudden you've gotten to this little bit of a pinnacle. Even though Mount Everest is all the way up there, you've reached a higher height than what you used to be. So kudos to you, right? Safe space, taking a million steps back of commemorating when we actually really do experience growth. But then the ego can sometimes make you somehow feel like either that height isn't worth going for or didn't hit there, or convincing you that this height is comparable to that height, which then, as you were saying, makes you kind of pause on your growth, which is interesting. Which is interesting. So you have to stay vigilant. You have to stay vigilant. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And
Well,
too much of the mind in the first place. See, the alchemical process should just make the mind eventually
yeah,
only talk when it's necessary. Because if there's too much
mm,
mental activity
mm,
in the first place,
yeah,
then it will undo anything.
yeah.
Because it just thinks too much. It'll create its own problem.
It's true. It's
If
true. It's
I'm at
true.
the
I was
peak or am I at the this? Like,
And yeah, this way, that way. Well, that's good. I was reminded when you said the Great Conjunction in that regard, in that sense. Shout out to any '80s or '90s fans from the idea of the movie The Dark Crystal when Olgra called it the Great Conjunction, right? So that was the first one that keyed in there, and that's a spiritual movie to go watch and enjoy as well, fam. Jim Henson was on to something there. Um,
I have to watch that.
Oof, so good, so good. Chef's kiss. It's '80s '90s gold. It absolutely is. Um, and we'll transition in that sense. We'll keep on going with this fact of the layers of truth and belief and these layers of awakening in our consciousness to keep the whole entire thread going. Because I think that it's interesting now also that when we engage from a coaching and a spiritual kind of position, and I'm taking a step back away from this idea of the term coaching because it's a colloquial phrase by this point. The healer, the guru. Ever since time immemorial, there was the wise woman of the village or the wise man of the village. We call it coach these days, right? So coaching at the same time. In that sense, we really understand that there's layers also of understanding. So everything that we just got done sharing, all the beautiful wisdom that you're pouring forth for the benefit of this conversation, anyone who's going to listen to it, is that there's levels in which we have to understand that people will literally only love themselves to the level that they can love others in that transaction. So they can love someone else as far as and deep as they love themselves. Someone can also grasp the level of attainment in wisdom, even though you're pouring forth gold. You may not be able to actually have that person experience the understanding at the fullness of what it is to experience that until they've reached that depth of consciousness themselves. And we can only ever expect individuals to behave to their own level of their own healed trauma. in that truest regard. There's these submodalities, even within all of these hierarchies of truth, belief, alchemy, and all these stages of awakening. And I know that this is something that is on all of our hearts all the time. So, how do you walk people through seeing what they don't know, what they don't already know, and how you help them grow in that truest sense?
So, one thing that I noticed very early on is that I had a calling for a specific, I guess, stage or
Yeah.
stages.
Yeah.
And that's just, it would even be kind of a little ridiculous for me to try to hold space for anything beyond that,
Yeah.
because it would be diluted in the thing where I could be the most helpful in those stages. So
Right.
I direct my teachings at the second wave of ascension and the
Mm.
first wave of ascension. And I'm
Yeah.
aware that there's other ways that we categorize these waves. So
Mm.
I may be confusing people, but I didn't know at the time when I was creating this terminology, first wave and second wave, that Dolores Cannon already had waves and that they were reverse of mine. So I would have probably just synced
Yeah.
that up. But I see the
Yeah.
first wave as actually the the leaders, the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
I don't see them as the first stage.
Mm.
So I direct my teachings at the second wave of ascension and the first wave of ascension. And so because of that, I am not even touching anything that's not in those stages. They would,
Yeah.
when they do find my content, they make sure to let me know that I'm very mentally ill and convoluted.
Oh no.
So there's there's no point. I would much rather
Yeah.
just put all of my energy into playing the fool
Yeah.
for the ones who need it, the
Mm.
first and the second wave of ascension. And what I
Yeah.
mean by playing the fool is looking convoluted, sounding convoluted, putting everything out there, knowing full well
Yeah.
that going into whatever I'm teaching that day, that I would look crazy to the majority of people, but still not
Mm.
caring and still not withholding for the spiritual ego or for that point the ego's sake. So
Sure.
for me, I don't I have now very high standards. It's
Mm.
if people don't meet me at a certain level of openness or
Yeah.
of whatever, like I don't have to drag anybody into the light. I don't
Yeah.
have to argue with them. By the time somebody comes to me, me and the universe have an agreement. And
Yeah.
that's, when they come to me, they have to approach me correctly.
Yeah.
Even if it's not truly approaching, I mean, like in the comment section or
Sure.
whatever it is. Like if a person thinks that I'm desperate to get them to believe what I believe, they're very wrong. And that
Yeah.
just means that the universe supplies them their perfect match in
Mm.
catalyst, but that I'm not that catalyst. So
Right.
long story short, I'm not really worried about the people who don't understand, because life will
Yeah.
sort out life.
I love that. I do. And honestly, again, just to say it because we're a fan. You're safe here. Safe space. This community is going to love you. I think the world of you. And I think that the work that you're doing is changing lives. I really do. And I think that the world at large has yet to maybe fully understand exactly what you're doing. I'll say it from that standpoint as well. And that they're continuing to grow as we're all literally recollecting our family of light and getting a chance to grow in that truest ability. I think that there's acolytes and there's individuals at the tip of the spear that are right now at the forefront. I would definitely say that you're part of that in that regard, leading the charge, and give it a few years as others awaken more and more, and it will shine out the darkness in that sense. So I'm willing to say that because I think the work that you're doing is fantastic. So happy to
Oh,
record
well,
that
thank
here.
you.
Yeah.
Well, I
I need it.
appreciate it, but I also want to let everyone know that I'm okay. I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
enjoy the contrast at this point. I am fully in my archetype of the magician, the fool. So I like the
Yeah.
contrast at this point.
Okay. Good, got it. You're gonna get love from us though, so just letting you know. So that's part there. Um, and let's dig deep because now we're touching on some of these really really powerful things, and this is something that I've seen a few of your videos be about, and some of the messages that you've shared. that touched me and resonated with me. And I think that you're someone who really does speak on this behalf very, very well from a loving place of empathy, understanding, and consciousness, full consciousness as well. Is that the inner child is a very crucial aspect in our spiritual awakening, and that it's vital to where we're going in our lives. And we talk about it a lot. We see a lot of content on the internet about it. We see it on these new posts in that regard, the ones with the AI voices and so on and so forth, just reading the script in some beautiful voice, right? It's like, that's okay. Hold on, wait. But you do yours so authentically and from the heart. So let's hear it from someone who knows this and embodies it. What is the role that the inner child plays, and what impact do you think that that really has on our spiritual journey in life?
Everything. So the role of the inner child is one that isn't just from this lifetime.
Yeah.
It's almost like a magnet.
Mm.
Whatever we just tap into in the masquerade that's
Mm.
going by the inner child,
Yeah.
whatever we give our full attention, love, presence with the inner child acts as a portal or a
Yeah.
magnet for any other vibrational match
Yeah.
in our soul stream that we have no reference point for, and we should be happy we don't have the reference point for.
Mm.
So in that sense, it also acts as the keeper of a lot of storage that I call the doom imprint.
Yeah.
I would, when I see them in a field, they do come up distinctly different, but for the sake of this, they are very compatible because we're accessing deep healing that we
Yeah.
don't have a reference point for, and
Mm.
that we would only really access other than that we do in deep sleep. So we
God.
process a lot of things in deep sleep, but when we want to consciously process things that we have no reference point for,
Yeah.
we simply look at the patterns that are showing up that we are displeased with in the present moment,
Mm.
and we find that within the inner child's content.
God.
Healing that is going to heal beyond that.
Mm.
So that's the most crucial role, because if we're not paying attention to the inner child, and I'm not saying we have to constantly, vigilantly, but we have to, I believe, get to a certain point of being comfortable enough to integrate the inner child.
Yeah.
And what we're going to see is that the essence of the inner child turns into the divine child. So it's
God.
not always going to show up as like a doom imprint,
Mm.
but it will unfold just like everything if the more we integrate it. And when it integrates, it turns into the divine child. And the divine child is kind of like what you would see, I guess, Buddhists talk about when you become childlike.
Mm.
How
Yeah.
enlightenment is an undoing. It's kind of it, just like in alchemy, how everything I described was stages of purification, aka reduction.
Yeah.
The same thing when when we are healing things deeply. What happens is that's ego.
Yeah.
We're healing the ego that has fruits. Those
Yeah.
fruits are, we have more of just the original essence. That original essence we could also call some sort of just like innocence,
Mm.
and that innocence was dressed up in different costumes.
God.
It was dressed up as a costume of this ego, or it was dressed up in the costume of that ego, or this defense mechanism, or this condition,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But when we're healing and integrating, now we're just getting to that core original essence.
Mm.
And that's what I would call the divine child. So every way you look at it,
Yeah.
the inner child is the gateway. It's the crucial portal for healing, for evolving, for ascending, anything that we have some sort of spiritual aspiration towards. We would
Yeah.
need to go through the inner child.
I love it. And I think what you're saying, and the fact of, to circle back just a step back, where you were
Yeah.
saying that maybe not putting the inner child at the forefront, but I'm gonna hard pause and hold space with you in that sense, that I'm with you all the way. Because obviously, what's the alternative? Ignoring the inner child? No, right? So maybe not putting it at the forefront or the preeminence, but maybe why not? Because I genuinely, and now to kind of unravel some of this for yours and mine's mind to congeal and meld together here, in the truest sense, I believe that humanity kind of is in a predicament most of the time when we incarnate. It's stuck between two paradigms, and it looks like this. that there's a rock and there's a hard place. And the rock has a name, and so does the hard place. And the rock's real name is we run away from our pain, right? That's the inner child part. We're literally running away from that aspect of our lives. The hard place over here, there's a chasm in between the size of the Grand Canyon, apparently, right, in our lives, where this manifests as we don't believe in ourselves enough. And it's interesting that when we actually really do the work of this alchemy, of this self-healing journey, of really representing the self and finding our inner child, the answer for both of those rock and a hard place is exactly the same. It's like a pyramid of some kind, and the answer slides right in between with, where the square is supposed to, the whole entire thing is just, it fits like a glove. And I would love your take on that, because I think that someone who is so aware and so enlightened, and you have such radiant light within you and what you're doing and the work that you're giving, there has to be something in that aspect of the fact of jumping from this chasm to that chasm, and finding a happy medium in there. And I think the inner child work that you're doing is so crucial in that regard. So I'll allow you to now to dive in, but that's what I think in that regard.
I completely agree, because what you just described could also be the chasm of the heart and the mind, or the different hemispheres.
Beautiful. Yes.
And with that, the more we integrate the inner child, the more we just stop playing those polarity games. And there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with polarity to create, because
Right.
alchemy is that creation through opposing or polar forces,
Right.
or that continuum, if you will, darkness of light. So there's nothing wrong with polarity, but when we're done,
Yeah.
when we're like, okay, I've had enough of samsara.
Yeah.
Okay, I've had enough of the dramas that I got to beautifully access
Yeah.
deep soul level in spiritual amnesia.
Right.
When we're done, now we will go in the middle way. You
Yeah.
just also described, I mean, try to get to a level of awareness where
Yeah.
you truly get spiritualness, where you get spirituality, and not have described some sort of middle pillar or eye of the
Yeah.
needle, because you
There you
just
go.
described that.
Yeah. It's happy
And it's
accident.
funny
Yeah. There you go.
because esotericists, even if they're not trying, we
Yeah.
will always describe the eye of needle even on accident.
Something comes through, like you said before, and it just kind of comes. It's not through us, and then it's a moment where we go, "Did that just come out of me?" I'm with you, 100%. I'm in alignment. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so in
It's
another
something.
sense, it's the eye of the needle. The inner child, what you just described, is what I've called, but also, like Yeshua called it the eye of the needle, but I
Mm.
just called, the middle pillar, because that's what mysticism calls it. It's like when you're done playing the polarity of extremes of inflammation, then you go,
Yeah.
okay, you go in middle pillar and you get out.
Yeah. Right. Up, out of here. It's done now. Yeah, and you said it. I'm done with samsara and avidya. I'm done with this ignorance and suffering. I'm done. I want out. I'm done. I had enough experience. I don't know why I signed up for this course, but I did, and I'm glad I did it. And now it's over. Yeah, it's
And
I
it was
find it.
fun, and
Yeah,
there's no venom, but the
yeah,
spiritual amnesia is real, and it's seductive, and it's addicting. And so then when you're done and you put away all of the clothes and the masquerading, you're just the spirit, aka
true.
Holy Spirit, and that's what goes.
That's right. Yeah, we're spiritual beings having physical realities. Not that we're physical beings having spiritual experiences. It's the other. I hold that near and dear to my heart as an absolute eternal truth, 100%. And I think to kind of gestate a little bit more with these, I love these kind of conversations with spiritual minds such as you. I really think that this is an important aspect also, to find individuals that are doing the work that you're doing in the truest sense. The reason why, and I'll take a step back in a humble way, maybe take 100 steps back and explain this for the sake of the audience and for the benefit of anyone listening to this in the future, is that a lot of us think that our spiritual journey, our healing journey, is kind of a luxury, something that we do in our pastime, or something that is something that I'll get to eventually. And it's interesting because that type of thing where we're putting it off ends up creating this lethargy or apathy in our lives that really does accumulate the stress that we're really actually trying to mitigate for the rest of the 10, 20 years that we're putting it off. And then all of a sudden, something happens, right? We lose a business, we lose a loved one, something happens, maybe even something amazing happens. You get married, you have a child for the first time, and all of a sudden, you have these aha moments that come into your world. And you start realizing that philosophy and spirituality and poetry is sustenance, it's essence. You need it. And you find out that, other individuals throughout history have felt the feelings that you feel and have thought the feelings that you've gone through and have had these hardships. And all of a sudden it becomes art that you knew that you needed, but you were starving yourself from it in that weird dichotomy of you didn't know what you didn't know. So unpack this with me, because I want to get your thoughts on that, because I think that's where we're at with humanity.
Yeah, at this point it's limbo. The universe keeps throwing dark nights
Yeah.
of the soul, and it's like, how low do you need to go? I mean, it's
Yeah, limbo.
compassionate
How
if you
low?
think about it,
Yeah.
because to not be provided those harsh catalysts would be worse, because there would
Yeah.
be, but they go in degrees,
Yeah.
or what, back to the pillars,
Mm.
severity. Severity comes in when there's not already the consciousness supplied.
Yeah.
So consciousness doesn't need to always have severity,
Mm.
but it will manifest that when we only respond through suffering.
Yeah.
But as you may already know, it's not only that. The more that a person integrates, evolves, the more they heal, they don't need such harsh or severe catalysts.
Yeah.
So suffering is a beautiful muse. I mean, as an artist, as a poet,
Yeah.
I dig it. But
Yeah.
if anything, it'd be like, what is what is art without this level of
Mm.
severity? And so
Wow.
that can be that's its own muse. But
I'm
yeah, so to answer your question, people who are going through those things and
Yeah.
they have the resources to
Mm.
put it on hold.
Yeah.
That, to me, that's just that's almost comical, because
Yeah.
putting it on hold and acting as though it's a luxury
Yeah.
is like, then it didn't, it wasn't a necessity enough,
Yeah.
right? Because many people turn towards
Right.
spiritual awakening out of some sort of like really harsh catalyst or necessity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really think that I had that necessity, because
Mm.
I always was like going through some sort of existential crisis. So for
Yeah.
me, that's just how I came in.
Yeah.
But what I've heard from other people who are what you're saying, where it's like a luxury, or it's on, it's off. Oh, I'll get to that after this phase of my life, stuff like that, where people actually have a luxury of holding off or putting it off until something's completed in the
Right.
in the character.
Yeah.
Um, from what I've heard from that, then it becomes a matter of like necessity. A person only
Yeah.
goes into that through some sort of crisis, something that was provoked, because if not, then they would continue to hold off on that, because there's just too much invested in the character. And so I don't monitor that.
Yeah.
Life will monitor that.
Mm.
But yeah, that's something that I do find quite interesting, how but that's because I value in life awakening. So I have a different way of perceiving things, such as kind of like, why not use every moment of this life
Right.
for awakening?
I love that. I really, really do. Thank you for your take on it in that regard. And it isn't it. It's paradoxical. It's inverse. The idea that they think that it's a luxury to one day sit there and ponder the thoughts of the universe and really what their trauma might be doing and heal from that. They think it's a luxury. As you just got done stating, it's a luxury to even have that in your life, to think that you really can postpone that. Like,
Yeah.
that's the takeaway from that. That's beautifully chef's kiss in that regard. Yes. Um, and the truest sense too. I think that one of the things that we did touch on that we might want to get into with that sense of the idea of how we end up having these cognitive thoughts that we come into, that download into us from the Akashic records, and our accessibility to them, and each embodiment is attained by our certain resonations and our growth and the layers that we've been talking about this entire episode. Um, Reincarnation, karma. Let's kind of dig into those two topics. And I know that there's a lot to unpack. This is probably a whole entire seminar that we need to have, but in that sense, let's do our best to to surmise this for the beautiful audience that's going to get a chance to get at some pieces here, what are some of the highlights about what karma is and what reincarnation kind of ties in with those things from the level of understanding?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
for a liberated being, they can opt into a specific karma.
Yeah.
But we are in, I guess you could call it an opt in realm, which
Mm.
means to get in, you have to leave things at the door. But what you take
Yeah.
on is a karma. So I'm just addressing
Yeah.
it from that highest level first, that liberated beings can opt
Love that.
in by taking on a karma and releasing their liberation for the crapshoot gamble of
Yeah.
going into the veils of forgetfulness here,
Yeah. Got
or the
I
spiritual
like that.
amnesia, what I was calling it. That said, now a person who wasn't liberated, they're still cycling within the fragmentation of the lower realms. Then
Yeah.
the karma is doesn't sound benevolent, but the karma is showing you always the next thing to reclaim your consciousness.
Mm.
Now, if we want to get super esoteric, we could bring up
True.
metempsychosis. Metempsychosis would be, yeah, you have karma to help you.
Mm.
It's showing you
Yeah.
mirrors. It's giving you a feedback loop, right? That's what karma is. It's a fractal of a feedback loop. To go, hey, are you going to
Yeah.
learn that lesson? Hey, are you going to get awareness that you were doing something very similar to this, just with a twist? Hey,
Yeah.
are you going to get that this is a belief you hold? Or hey, are you going to now feel empathy or compassion because you're put in the situation you put someone else in? Actions have consequences. Karma shows us the
Mm.
consequences of our actions so that we can self correct. If we don't self correct,
Yeah.
how many times do we get to just cycle in karma? Well, it catabolizes at a certain point.
Yeah.
Metempsychosis is, I think, a Pythagorean spiritual system that explains how after, I think it's like 108 tries out of a very large cycle, it's very
Yeah.
merciful. But after many,
Yeah.
many, several chances, if you just continuously choose by non-choosing to be
Yeah.
unconscious, then there nothing will incarnate. You get recycled. Your energy gets turned back into creative energy in the universe. So I know that that sounds
Right.
pretty bleak, but I'm just going to every I'm hitting all the notes here. So
Yep.
there's that going
Wonderful.
on as well.
Yeah.
Now that I've talked about the extreme liberated beings and metempsychosis, in the middle
Yeah.
now we just have life and karma, and reincarnation is the cycle of spiritual amnesia.
Mm.
And that's not even a bad thing, like God, we're God. If
Yeah.
God wants a vacation, why is that so bad? So, spiritual amnesia at that point can be how you get to experience separateness. But when you get lost in like
Yeah.
reincarnation and karma comes into play, karma can be looked at as helping you at that point. Karma
Mm.
actually doesn't even exist at certain levels of
Mm.
reality, but karma becomes necessary at other levels of reality. And the reason why it becomes necessary is because at that point it's helping you, or else you won't have some sort of rope to become conscious enough, to have catalyst enough to awaken out of that spiritual amnesia.
Wow. I love that. In the sense of that's the preeminence of the understanding of why it was even put into the universe. It's not a curse. It's actually a blessing.
Oh.
In that truest sense, it's always inverted. It's a blessing in disguise. We need it sometimes as building blocks to have something to work through to push us back so that we get it. Right?
Yeah, and also it holds like truth, right? Because
Yeah.
I can have my own truth and that's
Yeah.
fine. But if my own truth is so out of alignment with higher truth, then
Yeah.
at that point, wouldn't you want a higher, more benevolent form of
Yeah.
of system to come in? Because what if a person's own truth is one that is quite superior, domineering, and dangerous? So
Yeah.
the higher truth is one that humbles us when we when we lose sight of
Yeah.
our own selves. So I mean, there's many times when, and my severity of karma in this lifetime, like I've had massive autoimmunity, and I consider that fate.
Yeah.
So that's karmic by nature, because fate and karma are a part of that, and I see dharma and destiny being the other
Yeah.
end of that. So you have karma and fate,
Mm.
and then dharma and destiny. So
Yeah.
I have my own challenges in this lifetime, but let's just pull that back and look at something more shared, like universal challenges. We all
Yeah.
have where we want someone to get their comeuppance, right? I think,
Mm.
well, the
Yeah.
human ego wants another person to get their comeuppance. And
Yeah.
if there's a comeuppance that genuinely needs to have come up, then the universe will sort that out. But a lot of times we have a petty tyrant within. So
Yeah.
karma helps us become our true self, which is God, which goes, how can I love all,
Mm.
if that makes sense?
It does. It does. It does. And it shows up in others, so we get a chance to see it within ourselves. The Hall of Mirrors. Yeah, I love that. And you're definitely saying the right things in the sense of the fact of the third dimensional, fourth dimensional, fifth dimensional consciousness. And I'm only going to anecdotally say it. You have a breadth of wisdom beyond in this category that from the fifth dimensional understanding, if you wanted, say, for instance, the Ferrari, or if you wanted a jet plane to land on someone that was in high school that you didn't like on that day, in the fifth dimensional consciousness, it would have happened. That's right. Sorry, Jeremy, if we're out there, anyone named Jeremy, I'm just pulling a name out. Jeremy was smashed by an airplane instantaneously because of the fifth dimensional consciousness. There is just absolute manifestation. And we hear so many things about manifesting and the secret and everything else like that nowadays. And that's why we're on the third dimensional consciousness until we can be trusted with that kind of attainment, that kind of manifestations. We're at this octave until we've learned and worked through those and gone through that layer, like we were saying, 30 minutes ago in this wonderful episode. And then you go to the next stage, and now you're going to work on that because now the universe can trust that you will qualify the energy properly to not do harm to yourself or to others, right?
Yeah, you're a responsible creator. Could you hold on for one moment while I put my charger on my phone? I don't want, or well, I put my
Please
charger
do.
on this laptop. I don't want to.
Please do.
Okay.
Sure. Oh,
I am back.
okay. Got it. There we go.
Okay. I I'm back, but how do I get back on the screen?
The camera is not. Go ahead and turn the camera off and then turn it back on. Maybe give that a shot. Oh, no.
Let's see.
Did we lose? Oh, wait. Maybe it's coming. Oh, no. Oh, it's such a good talk. We were just about ready to get to the wrap up. That's all right. I'm here with you. I can't see you or hear you, but I'm here. Black screen. Nothing yet. I hear buttons. Nope. Yeah. Oh. All right. There we go. There she is.
My deepest apologies. My battery was draining fast because of my
You are
webcam.
all right. You are all right. You are the star of the show, so no worries
But now we
whatsoever.
can talk for however long you like because it's being charged.
No worries. Well, we were just about ready to get to. I usually go for about an hour and then kind of wrap it up. The longest episode that I've had so far is about an hour and 30 minutes. So, and you're in
Okay,
good hands.
yeah,
I'm
whatever
the one
you'd
who
like
does
to
all the
do.
editing. So, yeah, I got you. You're good. Um,
Okay, good.
we'll cycle back into this point, and then I'll say, well, okay. So we're just gonna 3, 2, 1 it, right? Three and
Yeah.
two and one. Here we go. So the next question that I kind of wanted to pivot into, and this can be towards the end here, and we can go, down this rabbit hole for a little while, is the idea that I find compelling, and I would love your intake on this, and I believe a lot of the audience would as well, from a spiritual, esoteric platform in that regard, to have this question asked, but at the same time also to really unpack it, is the idea that when we're thinking about growth and we're thinking about what we're here to do, and the ideas about our spiritual purpose in that regard. What is it that we are striving to do in this journey? In that truest sense, and I know that's a broad question. I want you to take that in any way that it sits on your heart as you're open to receive and to be able to share. What is it that is our purpose? And in your perspective, in your point of view, what are some of the things that you really think that we're here to do, Sarah?
Reclaim our power. I've never
Mm,
met one person going through a spiritual awakening
yeah,
who didn't get to a point where they wanted their power.
yeah,
So, um, and that does not mean that we don't continue to learn, but power is very essential and personal. And the more that we go
yeah,
through a spiritual awakening, whether a person is aware of this or not,
mm,
they're becoming more sovereign.
mm,
So, if I'm just as one example, if I'm teaching somebody how to have discernment,
yeah,
there should be fruits, even if the person isn't fully sovereign, fully, oh, I am the master of discernment. There should
yeah,
be fruits, which is they're growing up, they're
yeah,
learning discernment. Well, the more you grow up, the more you are going to be sovereign. And the more you're sovereign, the more you're tapping into your own authority.
mm,
That's power.
that is.
So purpose has to do with power.
Yeah,
And not and this universe has explored the theme of abuse of power.
mm,
So when I'm talking about power, I'm talking about
wow,
the power of, I mean, really, if we're going to talk about power, I'm talking about it at the level of our divinity.
I love that.
So we want our power, and then our purpose is something that serves all. Purpose
Mm,
is omnipresent.
yeah,
Purpose will never make a person do something they don't want to do.
yeah,
It just doesn't work that way because everything is so perfectly orchestrated that what you want to do is also the very thing that's your purpose and going to help something else.
yeah,
So because of that, if we follow whatever we think and interpret in our own free will or our own creative way
yeah,
what our power is, if that person wants to be seen as a performer, a conscious whatever, whether it's a speaker or a coach or a performer, like spoken word. I'm pulling for myself now because I wanted to be a spoken word performing artist that was like spreading conscious poetry at
yeah,
one point. But if they want to be seen,
yeah,
so remember, purpose acts in all directions. There's really no part that isn't incorporated, that is not involved in purpose. So because of that, it'll also be healing. So
yeah,
even if a person thinks that their power is showing their talent, and their talent is in making bracelets,
yeah,
that would be still them showing their creative expression, and that would be them in their power if they're truly
mm,
finding fulfillment in that. But so purpose is timeless and nonlinear because it's also healing.
yeah,
Be walking that path that feels fulfilling is what purpose
yeah,
is. Because really what purpose is,
yeah,
if we want to get super technical, is the pre-birth intention. So it's really an intention that we had before this lifetime. Now when we
mm,
get here, now we call it purpose.
yeah,
But that's not what the higher self would call it. The higher self would say, this is my pre-birth intention. Now we, the avatar, get to interpret however that intention is played out.
Interesting.
And when we're playing that out, going like, oh, that pre-birth intention is, let's say, I want to raise the collective consciousness, or I want to heal. It'll always be something that is like broad, but clear, because it's paradoxical. So because of that, then we come in and then we have our own way of acting that out.
Yeah.
Like our own charades of what that intention would be like. And that's called purpose. And so we're the ones that essentially bring something into focus and assign that purpose. Yeah. Really, it's just us going with that dharmic path of our pre-birth intention. So when we're on that dharmic path of our pre-birth intention, that's also only really able to happen if we're going through a healing, because healing and awakening go hand in hand. I've never known one person who's going through an expansion of awareness, going through an expansion of consciousness, and also not at the same time, even if it's not internally, but having some sort of healing taking place in their consciousness.
Yeah.
So all of those line up. It's like purpose is this really powerful and inclusive and multifold concept, because it's like a trinity, right? All good things have many different ways or distinct expressions of them. Yeah. And purpose is like that. Purpose is dharma, but then you have purposes, you and your power, but then you have purposes, you in like you evolving and becoming sovereign. So purpose encompasses a lot.
Yeah. Wow. And you eloquently wrapped it up in a beautiful bow there. I'm going to hit you with another question that has to follow this line of thinking too, if it hasn't already been in the works. And I'm sure the audience is going to want to know this as well. This will probably make you smile. When is the book coming? Where are we getting a book? Are we getting a book from Sarah? We need to get a book.
Yeah. I'm working on it. I'm. Okay. There's the largest conflict within me is like the route I go with the book. I put way too much pressure. I put the book on this pedestal. Now it's like, Sarah, just do the freaking book. But I've maybe assigned it a little bit too much of power in the fact of like who I want to publish, all that stuff. I just need to get it out.
We need it. We truly do.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for checking me, being my accountability buddy on that.
I see that it's in you, right? And yeah, count on Coach Adam here to be a support in that regard. And when you do launch it, come back and we'll have you on again to make sure that we get this out to the masses, because your wisdom is profound, and I just think the world of you. Now this is the part of the show towards the end. Then again, we can keep chasing more rabbit holes, so it usually kind of sums it up here. Is I like to give back the time completely to the guest that we have, and you've been such an incredible guest, is that I like to ask you, if you were to think about what message you would like to leave us with, to leave as a long-lasting image of this particular moment, for anyone to come back and listen to, that this is what was on your heart to share. I'd like to give you that opportunity to share that now, for the sake of the audience and for any listeners to come in the future. What is that message that you have for us to share today?
I'm sorry if this is anticlimactic in advance, but which I'm sharing on my heart right now, just what was on my heart, nothing in advance, is you're very interesting. You're intriguing me.
Oh.
I didn't really watch your stuff before this interview, and I'm taking in your frequency and your energy, and I'm just very impressed, and you're enormously intriguing. You have a balance and a unique expression that I'm really enjoying. So that's what was on my heart. Yes. You want a message for humanity? I guess I could say that the next year looks really defining, shall we say? No. So the message to humanity would be something along the lines of, I would look at what is honest attachments that can genuinely be deeply either released or resolved, like, because humanity at large has this identity crisis. It's super attached to being human.
Yeah.
It's very attached to being human. Like, I'm talking at all costs. And you know, whatever comes, it will only come from a healed, not an avoidant disattachment. It will come from truly healed, truly integrated non-attachment, if that makes sense, because they're worlds apart, and the nuance needs to be applied there. But yeah, so I would leave the message as, where is a person overly attached to being human?
I love that. And we're in that transition, hopefully, of vaulting to the next octave, if either not fourth or fifth dimensional consciousness for some of us. And I think that you are a guiding light in that truest sense for us with this path. So again, I'm humbled and grateful that you are on this episode with us today, and hopefully again in the future. Of course, we'll leave your links down in the bio down below. But where can people find you? If for anyone who's listening on the podcast, where can they find you, and let the people know?
You can find me at my website, thealchemist.community. I have a newsletter there if you'd like to sign up for it. I don't spam people. I actually have been told I don't send enough newsletters. But yeah, that's where you could get the latest, most current about my in-person events, such as my retreats and my soul gatherings. If you go on my Instagram account, you might run into many imposter accounts, but if you want to try your luck anyways, my official account is the.alchemist, and I only have one account. Yeah, and my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is my labor of love. So that's where all of my attention's going.
Yes. Yes, and yes, and yes. And that's where we found you, and that's where we'll continue to pump you forward. This community will embrace you with open arms as I have. And to the Rough Sketch of Final Draft family and Coach Adam listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and we appreciate you so much. Cheers.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Preach at all times, but if necessary, use words.
I love that.
Preach at all times, and if necessary, use words.
Thank you. What's on my heart is what's in my heart, which is just
emotional sense and in a professional sense.
I would say the first thing is professional. I'll talk to that. I think one of the